These 10 games went from total disasters to absolute masterpieces. At number 10, we've got Cyberpunk 2077. Unless you've been living under a rock, you're probably aware of how this game hit the scene back in 2020, and not in a good way. With all the hype, jaw-dropping trailers, and Keanu Reeves' unexpected reveal as a key character, gamers were expecting a revolutionary title. But launch day, absolute chaos. Bugs, missing features, and a console experience that was frankly a disaster. Social media had a field day, and I don't need to remind you of the memes and rants that followed. What's wild, though, is that after countless patches and updates, the game's deep narrative and beautifully crafted world finally started to shine. Sure, it's still unplayable if you're on a potato PC, but those who've played it give it a chef's kiss, calling it the futuristic masterpiece we were promised, proving that even the messiest game launches can turn things around. Moving on to number 9, we have Grand Theft Auto Online. While its console counterpart, GTA 5, made headlines by raking in a record-breaking $1 billion in just a few days, GTA Online had a rough start.
2,000 years later.
Players faced constant server issues, a barrage of frustrating microtransactions, and a game world that felt more like an unfinished beta than the chaotic, sprawling playground fans were hoping for. The situation got so complicated that Rockstar, the developers behind the game, had no choice but to issue a public apology to its players. However, slowly but surely, Rockstar continued introducing new missions, vehicles, and wild in-game events, transforming GTA Online into the juggernaut it is today, silencing much of the early criticism. At number 8, we've got Among Us. I know it's hard to imagine a time when this game wasn't everywhere, but when it first launched in 2018, it barely made a blip on the radar. Back then, the gaming scene was dominated by flashy, big-budget titles, and a simple indie game about colorful crewmates and sneaky imposters didn't exactly scream blockbuster. With little to no marketing, most people didn't even know it existed, and its player base remained modest for years. But then 2020 happened, and everything changed. As the world went into lockdown, people turned to games to stay connected, and Among Us quickly became a global sensation. Streamers and content creators flocked to it. Even politicians joined in, using the game as a platform to engage with younger audiences. By November of that year, Among Us had skyrocketed to 500 million monthly players, surpassing gaming giants like Call of Duty and League of Legends. Its simple yet addictive multiplayer gameplay made it a hit with both casual and hardcore players alike. The game eventually expanded to PC and consoles, and even launched an immersive VR version in 2022 to keep the experience fresh for its massive fan base. Coming in at number 7 is Fallout 76. What can I say? This one was a complete train wreck. Bethesda, the studio known for crafting beloved single-player experiences, tried to take a bold leap into online multiplayer with this entry in the Fallout series. But instead of delivering a smooth transition, they served up a chaotic mess. When it launched, the game was riddled with game-breaking bugs, server instability, and serious performance issues that made it nearly unplayable. Players encountered everything from disappearing enemies to the infamous overweight glitch, which rendered characters practically immobile. To make matters worse, Bethesda initially went radio silent, refusing to communicate with the frustrated community, which only fueled the outrage. Even after releasing a massive 47GB patch, which was almost as big as the game itself, many of the core issues remained unresolved. But slowly, things started to turn around. Bethesda began rolling out meaningful updates, and the Wastelanders expansion was a game changer. The addition of human NPCs breathed life back into the game, making it feel more like the traditional Fallout experience fans loved. And while it's still far from perfect and many players remain critical, Fallout 76 has managed to carve out its own niche as a unique online survival RPG. Next up at number 6 is Assassin's Creed Unity, and one of the most anticipated games of 2014. Set during the French Revolution, it promised stunning graphics and a return to the series' parkour roots. I remember watching those trailers and thinking, this is it, this is the game I've been waiting for. But then, oh boy, the launch was a half-baked mess. Missing faces, characters glitching through walls, frame rates dropping to single digits, and outright crashes plagued players' experiences. The broken state of the game became meme fodder, which was both hilarious and heartbreaking for fans. Unlike Bethesda's slow and hesitant response to Fallout 76, Ubisoft recognized their blunder right away. Yannis Maulet, the studio head, Red issued a public apology calling the launch a humbling experience. They rolled out patches to fix stability and performance issues, and even offered free content to make amends. Over time, Unity actually became pretty good. The updates fixed many problems, and the game finally delivered on some of its promises. While fans may never forget the launch disaster, they've come to appreciate the game for what it ultimately became. At 5th place is Star Wars Battlefront 2. This game had everything to be a masterpiece. Stunning recreations of the Star Wars universe, iconic characters, and a story mode bridging Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. But instead, it became a cautionary tale about greed. See, when it launched in 2017, loot boxes were a huge problem. Players could literally spend real money to gain gameplay advantages, which turned it into a blatant pay-to-win mess. Obviously, fans weren't having it. They canceled pre-orders, boycotted the game, and blasted social media with complaints. And to top it off, EA made things worse with a tone-deaf Reddit comment that went on to become the most downvoted in history. But here's the thing, EA and DICE eventually cleaned up their act. They ditched microtransactions, revamped the progression system, and started rolling out free content updates. By the time support ended in 2023, Battlefront 2 had totally redeemed itself, winning back players with fan-favorite heroes like Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Ahsoka Tano, plus tons of new maps and modes that really hit the mark. Now at 4th place, we've got The Witcher, the 2007 game, not the Netflix series or The Witcher 3. CD Projekt Red's first attempt at bringing Geralt of Rivia to life was definitely a rocky start. The visuals were rough, combat felt awkward and unpolished, and the animations didn't always hit the mark. Even the voice acting was, well, let's just say it left a lot to be desired. Oh, and those painfully long load times, brutal. But despite all that, The Witcher had something special. The moral choices weren't just black and white decisions, they were layered and thought-provoking. Fast forward to the enhanced edition, CD Projekt Red proved why they're so respected. They listened to fan feedback, fixed countless bugs, improved the graphics, and even added new content. Suddenly, The Witcher went from a rough experiment to a game worthy of recognition. People started appreciating its ambition, storytelling, and willingness to break free from the typical RPG mold. In 3rd place, we have The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. When it launched in 2002, it sparked a backlash that no one really expected. After Nintendo's jaw-dropping tech demo at Space World 2000, which featured a gritty, realistic sword duel between Link and Ganondorf, fans were hyped for a darker, more intense Zelda adventure, but Nintendo, they had other plans. Instead of leaning into realism, they went all in on cel-shaded graphics and a whimsical, cartoonish art style. The result? A game that looked more like a vibrant Saturday morning cartoon than the epic, mature adventure fans had imagined. At the time, the gaming scene was all about gritty realism, with heavy hitters like Halo, Combat Evolved, and Grand Theft Auto 3 dominating conversations. Against that backdrop, The Wind Waker stood out as, well, kind of odd. But here's the twist. What once made it divisive became its biggest strength. The cel-shaded visuals aged beautifully. The Wind Waker ended up with a timeless storybook charm that still feels fresh today. The HD remake in 2013 only cemented its status as one of the franchise's most beloved gems, proving that bold creative risks can sometimes stand the test of time. In 2nd place is Final Fantasy XIV, whose launch in 2010 was kind of a tragedy that caught nearly everyone off guard. Fueled by the success of previous Final Fantasy titles, the company appeared to let confidence morph into arrogance. Built on the notoriously flawed Crystal Tools engine, the game suffered severe performance issues like absurdly complex resource usage, where something as simple as a flower pot required the same level of processing as a fully animated character. Players faced clunky interfaces and a storyline that felt all over the place. The backlash was so intense that the company had to extend the free trial twice and ultimately eliminate subscription fees altogether. Given the disastrous release, Square Enix knew they were standing on the edge of a cliff. Instead of letting the game fade into obscurity, they brought in Naoki Yoshida, aka Yoshi P, to lead a total overhaul. When A Realm Reborn finally launched in 2013, it was nothing short of a miracle. The game was met with widespread praise, breathing new life into the franchise and setting a gold standard for MMORPGs. It was exactly what players had hoped for: polished, engaging, and worthy of the Final Fantasy name. In first place of this list, No Man's Sky takes the spotlight for one of the most infamous launches in gaming history. When Hello Games first revealed it, the trailer promised a revolutionary space exploration experience. The visuals were stunning: vibrant planets, dynamic space battles, and the freedom to carve out your journey across an endless galaxy. Sean Murray, the enthusiastic CEO, vividly described the game's boundless possibilities, but when the game finally launched, reality hit like a meteor. The planets felt barren, the creatures awkwardly animated, and the much-hyped multiplayer element was nowhere to be found. Players quickly realized that much of what had been shown in the trailers hadn't even been developed yet. The backlash was relentless, with fans and critics alike tearing the game apart. However, rather than giving up, Sean Murray and his small team at Hello Games could have easily packed up and moved on, but they didn't. Instead, they started rebuilding the game from the ground up. Major updates followed, first adding base building and freighter ownership, then introducing vehicles, story quests, and underwater exploration. The long-awaited multiplayer feature finally arrived, allowing players to journey across the galaxy together. Gradually yet steadily, No Man's Sky transformed into the expansive universe it had always promised to be.